Okay, fantastic. Welcome, everybody. We're so excited and so honored to have Dr. Bob Ballard join us live. And he is going to be talking to us about his work, his life's work and research, exploring the deep ocean. And he is a founder of the Ocean Exploration Trust and has just all kinds of great stories to share. And we're just so excited to welcome you back to Kansas. He's a Kansas native. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Ballard.
Absolutely. I'm a third generation Kansas. I was born in Wichita June 30th, 1942. Run the numbers. I turned 79 this coming month. And I'm just getting hit my stride. I misread the definition of retiring. I read halfway through the Indianapolis 500. You go in the pit and get a new set of tires, and it's called retiring. So that's what I've done. We're going to be doing so much awesome stuff coming up. But yeah, so I was born in Kansas, but I'm the first of 13 generations of Americans to go to college and graduate. So my brother and I not only went to college, both of us got our PhD. He was the smarter one. He got his in particle physics, but I also majored in physics, geology, math, chemistry, all of that. But I'm dyslexic, so I had a little tougher road to hoe in overcoming reading challenges that I had. In fact, there's a great my book, my autobiography. I got to plug in, or I'll be shot by National Geographic. It comes out for Father's Day, called Into the Deep. So that's just hitting the bookstores and Amazon, and then June 14th on National Geographic. So lots of stuff. But let's start. I thought I'd start with some initial introductory slides, and then we can go into Q&A. But let's start, Bruce, by showing them what we call Earth, which I find is a hoot. When you think that 72% of our planet is covered by water, why the heck are we calling it Earth? It's an ocean planet. And as I said before, when I was growing up, my parents asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, which all parents do. And I told them that I wanted to be Captain Nemo. I didn't read the book, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, until later in life. I watched the movie. So when I was 12 years old, I went to the movies and saw 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and fell in love with this whole exploration. And so when my parents asked me what I wanted to be, I said, Captain Nemo. And they didn't laugh. And I think what's really critical is you never laugh at a child's dreams, because dreams are your passion, and your passion is what gets you through life. Certainly in my case, with reading challenges and learning challenges, I had to overcome a lot because the rules were written by non-dyslexics. It's a little unfair. But it was the movie that Disney produced when I was 12, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So my parents said, well, tell us more about the Nautilus. And I said, well, it's a submarine. And we had moved from Kansas. My father was a test pilot with Chuck Yeager during World War II. And we moved initially to the Mojave Desert, and I ended up in San Diego as a child. So I grew up on the shores of San Diego. And right nearby was a submarine base. So they took me down to the sun. Now, these were diesel submarines. This was still World War II in the 40s. And I went aboard and I said, I want to be in submarines. And you'll see how that part of the dream came true. But my parents then said, well, the Nautilus was more than a submarine. I said, yeah, it had a window. And it opened like the iris of a lens, and you could look out of the window and see the underwater world. And this is where I saw that when I watched the movie, Captain Nemo walking on the bottom of the ocean. So for me, as a 12-year-old, that just fascinated me, that the ocean had a bottom. And so then I went on to get a PhD in geology and do it. So fundamentally, I was able to live my dream. First, as a naval officer, I was involved in deep submersibles, deep diving submarines as a naval officer. And in fact, that one you see me in my little white uniform, they called me the White Tornado, because I was not only dyslexic, I'm ADHD, had a lot of energy. And so I would zoom around in my white uniform, and I got the nickname the White Tornado. Here he comes. And I spent a lot of time in that big submarine with the orange top called the NR-1. NR1 was almost identical to the Nautilus. I couldn't believe it. I was on a submarine, exactly what I wanted to be. It had wheels. It could roll around on the bottom of the ocean. It's the smallest nuclear submarine we ever built. It had windows. You could go underwater for a month. And for 30 years, I was in and out of that submarine as a naval officer doing a lot of classified things that, like I told you, have to shoot you. But some of it's now in my autobiography because they declassified it. But my favorite submarine was Alvin. And Alvin was my deep sea jeep as a geologist, much smaller than the NR1. The Spear, I shot that picture, interior picture with a fisheye lens. I'm 6'2", and if I stood up in Alvin, I would hit my head on the hatch because it was only 6 feet in diameter. But I lived in that submarine exploring. But again, I was very lucky to have been a graduate student. After I got out of the Navy on the GI Bill, I went back into graduate school and majoring in geology, and there was a whole new revolution going on back then about the ocean floor that I was fixated on. And this was published when I was in high school, showing that beneath the sea is a great mountain range. And that was just really hard to wrap your mind around it. You don't think of going down the mountain ranges, but the largest mountain range on Earth is the mid-ocean ridge. It runs around the planet like the seam on a baseball, and it covers 23% of the Earth's total surface area. Yet, we didn't go to the largest feature on Earth until we went to the moon. Can you imagine that? We sent astronauts to the moon. They played golf up there before we even went to the largest feature of Earth itself. And we then began to discover that the mid-ocean ridge, this giant mountain range, has tens of thousands of active volcanoes, and it's along this great boundary where the Earth creates its outer skin. The Earth is made up of about 32 pieces, like a soft puzzle, and those pieces are doing three things. They're either moving away from one another, which is where you see the arrows diverging, creating and opening up the Earth, bleeding its blood, or converging where they collide and the old skin of the Earth and the ocean goes back inside the planet. Or the third behavior is where they move sideways like the San Andreas Fault. So that plate tectonics is really simple. Once you figure out science, it tends to be a lot simpler than when you don't know the answer. I always tell people, if you can't tell a fifth grader what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. Because science ultimately becomes very simple and obvious. And I was taught, again, by my ancestor and my mother, both one from Wichita, one from Topeka, common sense. And I got through life with just that common sense. It's not rocket science, actually. Science, once you figure it out, is pretty straightforward. But here we have the Earth creating this outer skin. Then this is one of my favorite ones. I call it the bleeding Earth. This shows you the age of the ocean floor through time. And if you look at the bar, you'll see that the black line is the axis of this mountain range, and then the red bleeding. You'll see that the plates move at different speeds, so they have different bleeding patterns, but that is what the Earth bleeding pattern looks like. And if you collapse Africa back onto North America and South America, you go back 150 million years in time when the Atlantic was born into existence. So my PhD thesis dealt with the creation of the North Atlantic as a graduate student way back then. But we then wanted to confirm this. This was all theoretical, done with magnetometers and gravitometers and the bathymetric math. But no one had gone down with the Mark I eyeball. And again, being dyslexic, I'm totally visual. But because I'm dyslexic, when I go to a world of total darkness, I can see it in my mind. I can imagine it. And so we wanted to go down, and these are cartoons, some of them, two of them are real, showing that the bleeding Earth. Now, the one where you have what really looks like a mountain range is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. that's the one running down the center there. Its plates are separating at a slower speed, so the bleeding rate is lower. But in the Pacific, where it's wide, you get massive bleeding. But no one had actually gone down and witnessed the process of muscle genesis. That was pretty cool. But then, driving along, so you can imagine driving along the valley. See the valley on the upper right, you see the yellow stuff. That's running down the very axis of that. You go back to that map and you stare in there, running down the very axis is a rift. So it's a mountain range with a valley at the summit. So it's cut in half. So that summit was cut in half when the plate separated. It split it open. That's why you see mountains on the left and mountains on the right. And you drive down that crack called the Rift Valley. So imagine I'm in my submarine driving along and I come across that. And I'm going, what is that? Now I called it black smokers because it looked like, smoke chimneys, but it's not smoke at all. In fact, when we got up close to it, which is actually turns out to be rather dangerous, we didn't know it. We could see that the fluid coming out of that chimney was crystal clear for about a centimeter, 2 centimeters, about an inch. And then it turned black. And what it is this super hot fluid coming up from the magma chambers where the volcanoes are. And as soon as that fluid hits cold water, it precipitates out that smoke. And it's really microcrystals of pyrite, chalcopyrite, and hydride and sphalerite. We call them polymetallic sulfide deposits. Most importantly, they're commercial grade ore of copper, lead, silver, zinc, and gold. We have discovered along the entire fleeting earth are vast ore deposits. And so we sort of opened Pandora's box because countries now want to go out and mine them. So there's huge controversy on doing deep sea mining. So that's, sorry to cause that problem, but science is a two-edged sword sometimes. But then we also realized, because in our discovery of plate tectonics, we threw out our geology book. So the geology book I read in school was thrown away, and we wrote the new one. When I was in my chemistry, I had a quadruple major in college. I had math, physics, and geology. So I did a lot of chemistry. My chemistry book said there's this hydraulic cycle where we circulate water through the atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. There's a second system we didn't even know existed, this hydrothermal system, where the entire volume, think about it, of the world's oceans is going inside the earth and out every 6 to 8 million years. It's cycling inside the planet, inside the mountain ranges, where when you go back to that picture, you'll see those deep cracks running along those fissures when you rip it open. Water's going down those fissures and circulating and coming back up. And prior to this discovery, we couldn't balance to the mass balance calculation. We couldn't explain the chemistry of the ocean. But once we discovered these, we were able for the first time to balance all the equations, and we threw away our chemistry book. So that was thrown away in that time. That was then dwarfed, literally, by what we found living around us, these exotic creatures, characterized by giant tube worms that were 13 feet tall, that were sticking out their lungs. That red feathery thing is the worm's lung. That's crazy. And then it's ingesting poisonous hydrogen sulfide gas. This worm is literally inhaling a gas that would kill any other creature on the planet or any other plant. Because that, as well as these giant clams, would have human-like blood in them. And when we dissected, that's me holding the first clam we ever recovered. We dissected the clam expecting to see the internal organs of a clam, like we eat on the half shell. It had no internal organs. It had no mouth, no gut, no gut. It had given up its entire body to another creature. A bacterium, we now call them extremophile. A bacterium that had figured out over eons of time how to duplicate photosynthesis in the dark through a process we call chemosynthesis. And so now we threw out our biology. less than 10 years, we threw away the geology book, the biology book, and chemistry book, as we rewrote science, and we started to then realize, which is the new controversial concept of Gaia. And the concept of Gaia, which I believe is that the earth itself is a creature, that the earth is a living creature that can reproduce, is how it does it. But this Gaia is then living symbiotically with all life on our planet. This is supposed to be a symbiotic relationship between the planet and all the life on the planet. And that's been going on for billions of years since bacteria first came into the game, about 1.5 billion years ago. When Earth was created, very early in Earth history, it had an ocean, and very early in development, the life forms within. But right now, there's one species that's threatening everything, and that's humans are now threatening Gaia, and they're threatening all other life on our planet, and they will win. They will win if we don't come to peace with the planet. We need to really, and it's we don't have a lot of time, folks. There's no plan B for humans. We're not going to live on Mars or they won't live there. We need to come to peace with our planet. That's the challenge that the generation that you teach, and third generation of students, you've got to watch now. And you've got to really, really take this serious. Because Earth will be around for billions of years. Life will be around for billions of years. The question is, will the human race survive? And the jury's out. It's serious stuff. And so whatever you think, whatever, you just look in the mirror and look at yourself and look at the next generation. Because we gotta get back in harmony with the planet. So that's a very important part. Equally important, what we discovered from our explorations is that we're not alone. We now know that there's life, a high probability of life throughout the universe, but we humans, cannot leave our own solar system because the laws of physics will not permit you to travel fast. Life, you reach infinite mass long before that, and your heart fails and all that. We cannot escape this system. So we are here, and this is where we need to make our peace. Now, a lot of my early work was done by physically going down to the bottom of the ocean. But I was spending all my time going to work. The Titanic, which rests at 12,000 feet, took me 2.5 hours to get to the Titanic in the morning, and 2.5 hours to get home. I spent half my day commuting to work. Can you imagine spending 5 hours in your car every day? When I go to 20,000 feet, it was 6 hours each way. That's 12 hours in my car. I spent minutes at work. So then I began with my dyslexic mind to think of another way of doing it. And I created what's called telepresence, the technology of moving your spirit, which is indestructible, and leaving your body behind. Humans, 95% of all humans live on less than 10% of the planet. 95% of it. Because 72% of it is oceanic, but down there. We don't have hills, stars. Most of the earth is total pitch black, what live there. And of the 28% of land, 40% of it's uninhabitable. You're not living on Antarctica, are you? You're not going to live in the Gobi Desert. So we are really living on a small piece of the planet, and as our population continues to rise, our food, the planet won't be able to feed us. And by 2050, how far away is 2050? We're losing farmlands to more and more houses. The population grows to 10.5 billion. So we need to figure out how we're going to turn to the sea for our food, turn to the sea for many things, and the importance of empowering women. The only solution, when I've asked by the presidents, I've met most of all presidents we've had since Richard Nixon on the pole, 79. And I'm asked by presidential panels I've served, what's the single most important thing the human race whole bunch of reasons why I say that, and we can talk about it in Q&A, but that's why 55% of my team, my core, are women in positions of leadership and authority. Leadership and authority. So you look at my team and you will see also the faces of America. We need that. We need all the faces of America. And when I show you an image of my core, which I have here, you'll every case by themselves. So anyway, that's been my main thrust, has been to develop this technology, what we call the technology of telepresence. Oops, I went backwards. And move my spirit. So I am now moving spirits. I'm in, come back and hear Bruce for a second. There I am. Where am I physically? Does it matter? Does it matter where I'm sitting right now? Not at all. I'm on the ship, ADP. My spirit's on the ship. I have my own surrogate robot, my Navi, like Avatar. I have a Navi called Krypton, carries my spirit. I can get in it at the speed of light. My spirit's indestructible, moves at the speed of light. And I may be on the ship, maybe I'm not. Let you figure it out. I will physically be on the ship July 7th because I just like it. But I like riding horses, but I don't ride them for work. Okay. My wife's a horse right now. But anyway, so let's go back. So the idea was to develop this technology, which I used for the first time to flying the Titanic. Most people will talk to me not because they found hydrothermal vents or black smokers or over the concept of plate technology. My mom, when you got to get my book, I got to plug my book into the deep. It comes out Father's Day, and it's available on Amazon right now, and it's my autobiography where I tell a lot of things I haven't told people, certain ones that I'm dyslexic, which I'm very proud of. But I remember when I found the Titanic, I went on all the talk shows, the Today Show, the Tomorrow Show, the Day After Tomorrow Show, and I finally came home, and my mom from Kansas called me, and she said, we saw you on all the talk shows, but it's too bad you found that rusty old ship. And she said, yeah, you and your brother are the first of 13 generations of our family to go to college. Both of you got PhDs, and you've done amazing science. But now they're only going to remember you for that rusty old boat. So yes, I have some slides here on the Titanic. I found it, I explored it, and I did all of that. But I got to tell you that then I went on to find, went inside of it, did all that stuff that I'm supposed to tell you about. Went on to find other ships, but it's really this ship, my ship. And naturally, I call it the Nautilus. And this is my teleporter that took my cartoon of telepresence and turned it into reality. And we are hooked up back to shore in real time. There's my Navi, Hercules. And then it goes into our inner space. Those are the vehicles that carry my spirit, but not my body. But when I'm in them, I'm confident I'm in it. And then I put it on a satellite from our command center, go back to our inner space center, get on Internet 2 Level 3, go wherever you want to go. Whether I do it with other scientists that are doctors on call, or whether I do it with kids, wherever they are. July 3rd, we turn on the satellite, and we'll be doing it until December 20th. And you can tune in, participate, take questions and answers, but there's my comment. I got every face. I got everything you can get in the human population are members of my core. Everyone's your core. You just need to study a little harder. But this is nautiluslive.org, and it goes to live and viral July 3rd. So let's come back. So that's what a kid from Kansas has been up to. And I'm so glad to be talking to home state. So, you got any questions? Lisa?
I think we did have some questions. You want to share a question, you know? I had a student who asked what your favorite deep sea organism is.
That giant tube worm. Can you imagine a 13-foot worm when it gets up at and sticks out its lung and breathes poisonous gas? Pretty hard to beat that. I'd go with the 13-foot tube worm.
Questions?
Although the clam, old clams on the hatch, no way I'm going to eat that thing. It smells like rotten eggs because of the hydrogen sulfide. I don't want to eat that clam.
Oh, okay, good question.
Then what's the next one? That was an easy one.
A student is asking, were you specifically looking for the Titanic when you found it?
I was, but I had to. As you know, I was a Cub Scout, Boy Scout, Explorer Scout, Army officer, Naval officer, war uniform. On my honor, will do my best to do my duty to God and the country. And yet I had to tell a lie. The Titanic was not my real mission. I was on a top secret mission during the Cold War, and I was using the Titanic as a cover. It really was hard, given my background, to not tell the truth, and that's why the autobiography of the show, I finally told the truth. I was actually on a top secret mission to explore two nuclear submarines we lost during the Cold War with all hands. Those they lost 30 years of combat, and it had nuclear weapons on the course, and I needed a cover, so I convinced them to let me. And they were furious when I found the Titanic. I got called on the carpet by Admiral Monson. You, Commander Ballard, you were supposed to look for this and you were not supposed to find it. And I've always lived by the accident, never asked permission to say forgiveness. I said, I'll never do that again, sir. But he actually came around. But no, I was actually doing the top secret mission. And I did my mission, and then I went to the Titanic. But yes, into the deep, it's all there. Send me a plate, I'll autograph it, send it back to you. It's in your bookstores in the next heartbeat, if not now, in July, June 14th. And look at the May issue of National Geographic magazine. So we're all coming out, fessing up, and I'm feeling really good. I wish my grandma and mom were still around, still like that.
In the chat, we had the question, did you find clams that were not infected with the extremophile bacteria, or did they all have them?
Paper. All of them, they're not infected. This is not an infection. This is like the bacteria in the body. You've got that bacteria in your stomach. That if you don't have that bacteria, you're a dead puppy. So this is a symbiotic relationship. They like one another. They're codependent upon one another. They can't exist without one another. True symbiotism. This is not a parasitic relationship. No, they really like it. It's like us on Earth. The Earth's getting not to like it, so watch out. So, yeah, that's not a parasite. Can you imagine the conversation they must have had over time? Yeah, let me live in your body and breathe poisonous gas. Sure, I'm going to do that. Well, they cut the deal somehow. So, evolution. All right.
Can I ask one more question? Dr. Ballard, you mentioned that you don't believe humans can or will exist on other planets. And I'm curious if that opinion was informed like by research, physics, or is that more personal?
No, it's why I'm a religious person. I don't have problems.
Organs,
Science and faith.
I don't know if you know.
I have no problem at all. Anyone wrote the greatest thing that God did was write the laws of physics. They are the law. The real laws control all action on the universe. That's a pretty simple set of laws that play everywhere. So no, I have. It's just a statistical probability. We now know that you have an amazing number of Earth-like planets. The Goldilocks zone. The whole original thought was, well, we're so lucky here on little Earth. We don't live too close to the sun, and we don't live too far away, so when we have now found that Jupiter and Europa, for example, have their own little solar system, those moons, when you look at Europa, you see it covered in ice, but the ice is moving. We now know it has an ocean. We're now designing a probe as we speak to fly to Europa, land on it, go through the ice, and explore its 60-mile ocean. It will have active volcanoes. We know from looking at Enceladus, which is a moon of Saturn. Enceladus has geysers erupting. We've seen the geysers. You can fly through those geysers with your mouth open and catch what's coming out of the geysers. What they're going to do, probably catch the light. I'm confident within 20 years we will find life within our own solar system. Confident, I'll bet on it. Well, I'm not supposed to do that, but anyway, I'll give them good odds and I'll bet. So I'm confident we're going to find life within our own solar. Now, will it be driving around? No. It'll be primitive. It's not going to be advanced life. But statistically, in outer space, for sure, we can't get there. So we've been cordoned off. There's no, we got to make it work here. We can't, we're not going to get off this solar system. You just can't get there. When someone says we found a planet-like object, a mere 10 million light years away, good luck on that trip. That's a 20 million year planet. We can't physically have our body leave the solar system. The math doesn't work. You can't get out of here. No. We're cordoned off. Now, you want to get a little religious. Your spirit has no math. Think about that. Your spirit can go where your body can't. Let that sink in. And that's a long conversation. And I've spent many nights with those long conversations. But it's fascinating when you realize that that's what we're doing now with our technology. We are physically leaving our body and going to an end effector, what they call it, end effector. I've got 3 minutes for that to go and have my eye surgery checked to make sure my eyeball. I got a bionic eye. It's pretty cool. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
So I have 3 minutes for I have to run out the door and go and sit in the doctor's office and wait for how long you
All right. We have two questions.
Anyway,
Two questions in the.
all right, fire away. I'll give you quick answers.
Okay. A couple of students have asked, what's the scariest part of your mission? And then how has dyslexia affected your work?
Well, dyslexia has empowered me. I mean, I'm able to do things you non-dyslexics can't do. I'm almost, you can see the future. I think there's so much I've been able to predict rather accurately 15 years out. I can imagine things. That's my power. And I also believe in the power of observation. If you look at something long enough, you can figure it out. And my kids always say, stop eyeballing me, Dad. And I go, I'm just trying to figure it out. It's long enough to figure it out. So clearly, the observational skills that we have. There's a great book called The Dyslexic Advantage, which you've got to get, by Brock and Bernetti, E-I-D-E. And by the way, I see the word when I said it to you. I see the word E-I-D-E that I've memorized words. And I close my eyes. I don't have a building grip sheet. I did with the grades because I memorized everything. Close my eyes. But anyway, so get that book, The Dyslexic Advantage. Also look up Open Dyslexic Font because it frees up the dyslexic's ability to read. Not as optimum, but if you read faster with Open Dyslexic Font, you have 15 to 20% of your class are dyslexic. They're just not raising their hands because they're afraid that being told that they're stupid. They're not stupid. They just learn in a different environment. If I wrote the rules, you guys would be very bored. Now, the first question was, what was the first one? Was that 2 minutes before I?
Several students have asked what was the scariest part of your work?
Almost getting killed a couple times. That's pretty scary. That's why I like robots now. Again, in the book I described the gnarly situations that come to build, where I didn't think I was going to get back from 40,000 feet. That can really reflect a lot. So yeah, I would say that's why I love robots. I just sell insurance company. I love the robot. So no, I like sending my spirit, not my body. It's in the struggle. All right. So I want to tell all you Kansans, study hard. And you can, science and faith are not a problem in life.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.